What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This. This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the very first, at least that we are talking about, subclasses of Rogue. We talked about class last week, and I got some amazing comments from all of you all. Thank you so much for all of the warm welcomes back into it. I know it took a bit of a break, but I'm back and we're doing Rogue stuff, and I know that a lot of people are excited about that. So we get to jump into things, but before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also make sure to click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and share the video with your friends. So what's first up? I believe we are talking about the Arcane Trickster, which is a super fun take on the Rogue. This uses not only trickery, but also magic in order to be sneaky and to get in and out of places that the character needs to go. It's pretty cool, right? We've talked about things that do things that are similar to this. The Eldritch Knight comes to mind. I'll put that up in the iCard above. A normal class that normally doesn't get magic, they gets a little bit here and there, and ends up being pretty effective in that case. But how does it work with the Rogue chassis? Let's find out. Starting off at level 3, we get spellcasting, which is very exciting, right? No other rogue is going to get something like this, and it makes it very unique and very, very fun. So there is a chart that I'll put up on screen for you that has basically what's going on with your spellcasting. You are going to be a 1/3 caster. You have half casters like the Paladin, the Ranger, that kind of thing. This is a 1/3 caster, similar to that of the Eldritch Knight. So you're only ever going to get up to 4th level spells, and that's not until you get to level 19. So your progression is incredibly slow. You will learn a maximum of 13 spells, and you will eventually get a total of 4 cantrips, assuming you go all the way. Overall, it's not too bad, right? You do get 3 cantrips, one of which includes Mage Hand right off the bat, and Mage Hand is great, and we will talk about that a little bit more here in a second. And your spell list that you use is the Wizard spell list, which is really, really good. Now, I'm not going to put up every rule of spellcasting because, I feel like you all probably get the gist of that. If you don't know how spellcasting works, then check one of my other full casters videos that I've posted. But one thing that's interesting about this that's different and kind of makes it similar to the Eldritch Knight is that you are limited to 2 schools of magic when you choose certain spells. So when you get to choose your first 3 spells at level 3, you get 1 spell of your choice off the wizard list, and then 2 spells that have to be from either enchantment or illusion. That does limit you a little bit, but enchantment and illusion are really good schools of magic though, and there's a lot of really great spells that really fit the roguish archetype. So that's not that bad of a problem, honestly. I think that restriction is still fine. We do use intelligence as our spellcasting modifier and ability, so we do become a little bit more mad than your typical rogue would be, but that's okay. It's really not that big of a deal because we were only focused on 1 score already, and that was dexterity. This just adds another one, and yeah, maybe your constitution goes down a little bit, or you just pick spells that don't need saving throws, and then it doesn't matter, right? So there are ways to work around it, and ultimately it ends up being fine. So how does this rank? It's spellcasting, right? Spellcasting is one of the best things that you can do in the game. It's absolutely amazing. This version of it, of course, is very much scaled back from what a full caster would get, or even a half caster even. So I can't necessarily rank it a 10 out of 10 like what I would with a full caster, but it does use one of the best spell lists in the game, so that does help it as well. For this, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. It's really, really strong, of course, and on a rogue, this can be made really, really useful. There are a lot of great spells on the wizard list, way too many for me to list all of them, but there are so many here. Silvery Barbs, to name one, which is on the enchantment school, which I know a lot of people aren't very happy about. Yeah, there are things like that can really enhance the rogue's both sneak factor, but also support features when it comes to helping the rest of the party. Now, I mentioned that I was going to come back to Mage Hand, and here we are with Mage Hand Ledger Domain. This also comes online at level 3 and allows you to buff the Mage Hand cantrip. Now, the Mage Hand cantrip was already one of the best cantrips that's out there, and now it gets made even better by this subclass. But in what ways? So with this, what we get to do is make the hand invisible, for one, and we can also stow one object that the hand is holding in a container. Normally you can't be that dexterous with it. You can retrieve an object in a container worn or carried by another creature, so you can pickpocket with it. Again, normally it's not that dexterous. And you can use thieves' tools to pick locks and disarm traps at range. That is huge, right? There are so many of these things that, you go up to a chest and you go to open it and there's a poison dart trap, right? There could be anything like that. You now can just stand around the corner, send your mage hand out there, and if a poison dart goes through your mage hand, who cares, right? It allows you to completely bypass a ton of traps, and this will come into play all the time, all the time. So you can perform, of course, one of these tasks if you make a sleight of hand check, just like you would normally. But again, this is at distance, so the person that you are trying to pickpocket or whatever isn't necessarily going to know it's you, even if you are found out, as long as you are stealthy enough. So that's also really good. And you can use the bonus action granted by Cunning Action to control your hand. There's just so much going on with this that makes this so much better. And it was already a great cantrip, right? This was not some crap cantrip that nobody cares about and that nobody uses. No, this is taken all the time and it's great. And now it's made borderline OP. It's really, really good. Mage Hand Ledger Domain gets a 10 out of 10. I can't really give it any less than that. It's a cantrip that is made stupid good and has a ton of applications, especially for a rogue. At level 9, we get Magical Ambush, and this is pretty gnarly. So if you are hidden from a creature when you cast a spell that requires a saving throw, that creature has disadvantage on that save. Now, it's super simple, right? There's not a whole lot going on here, but that's really good. That's really, really good. Like I said, we are going to be split. We're going to be mad in this case because we're still going to want to focus on dexterity for everything. We're not using this as our primary means of dealing damage. That's not what we are here for our magic. We're still dealing damage with dexterity. We still need our armor class to be high with dexterity. This is for more utility stuff, or you have things like, I don't know, Crown of Madness. You have things like Tasha's Hideous Laughter. You have a lot of these support things that do require a saving throw that, as long as they don't know you're there, they will have disadvantage on this save. So it doesn't matter nearly as much that you don't have as good of an intelligence, and that is huge. Ultimately, this gets a 9 out of 10. It's very strong for your spells. It really shores up a big weakness that this creates. And I say big, I mean, it's really not that big of a weakness, but one weakness it does create in being mad, this just fixes it right back. And it's early enough to where you're probably going to see this used. So ultimately, it's really good. At level 13, we get Versatile Trickster, and this makes our mage hand even better. Because why not? So with this, we can take a bonus action and distract enemies with our mage hand. So we pick a target within 5 feet of the hand that is created by the spell. And when we do this, we now have advantage on attack rolls against that creature until the end of the turn. Now, this is a little weird wording, and it comes from this being a really early type of subclass. You're gonna have to talk to your DM what the definition of end of the turn. Usually that would be interpreted as end of your turn. Some people would say end of the turn as in, the rest of the people in the round of combat. I call that a round. Some people call that a turn. You need to talk about that. I personally say end of your turn in order to make it not so OP. The thing is, this basically is the same thing as steady aim, but you still get to move. So it's technically better than steady aim. You get to use your bonus action to give yourself advantage on the attack as long as it's within the range of your mage hand, right? which is pretty good. I mean, Mage Hand has a pretty good range, and so I'm not really concerned about that all that much. So yeah, this is basically just a little bit better than your feature that you already got back at level 3. So it's really up to you as to what you need, but you can get advantage pretty reliably here at the cost of your bonus action, which isn't too bad there. Ultimately, this gets an 8 out of 10. Like I said, it's a little bit redundant nowadays. It definitely was better prior to Tasha's, I think, just because this was one of the only ways to do that. But with steady aim, it becomes a little bit more redundant. It's still really good, don't get me wrong, and it is still better than steady aim. But we've been doing something similar to this since level 3, and here we are, level 13. Most people aren't going to get this far anyway. Finally, level 17, we get Spell Thief, and this is wild if you get this far. So with this, whenever a creature casts a spell that targets you, or you are included in its area of effect, you can use a reaction to force the creature to make a saving throw with its spellcaster ability modifier. The DC equals your save DC, of course. On a failed save, you negate the spell's effect against you and steal the knowledge of that spell if it is at least a first level spell and of a level that you can cast. Whether or not it's a wizard spell doesn't matter. For the next 8 hours, you now know that spell and can cast it using your spell slots. And of course, creature cannot cast that spell against you for another 8 hours. Once you do this, of course, you cannot do it again until you finish a long rest. Now, this spell is pretty cool, and to me, I see the most use of this in Friendly Fire. Personally, I think that if you wanted to, you could go stand out by yourself and have somebody cast Fireball on you, and then you send this back to them, they fail to save, and now you have Fireball because you want to, right? You have that now. But there are plenty of other spells that are way better than this. You've got, of course, things like Spiritual Weapon if you wanted to do something like that. You've got a lot of other spells. Now, unfortunately, I don't believe something like Conjure Animals or Conjure Woodland Beings or anything like that. I don't believe those would work here because you're not targeted by those necessarily. It doesn't work with a summoning spell as far as I can tell. So that's, there are a few there that won't really work. But still, there's a lot that really can work here. You've got things like Hypnotic Pattern, which are good. Again, you could have taken this already, but this saves a slot here of a spell that maybe you didn't take, or you could take something from somebody else's spell list that maybe you didn't have access to at all. Regardless, this is super good, and it's kind of like Magical Secrets on a limited basis. So I like that. I like that a lot. It's pretty good. For a 17th level feature, I don't know that it's necessarily broken, but it's still really good. It's got to be a 9 out of 10 for me. Being able to steal a spell of up to 3rd level at this point, 4th level in a couple of levels, that's still going to be pretty cool, and I definitely like it. So what do we think of the Arcane Trickster? This thing is pretty fun. Having spellcasting on a rogue is really good, and it really helps you to be a lot more versatile, both in dealing damage, but even more so than that, in being a more well-rounded and better supportive character. A lot of rogues tend to end up in this weird little pigeonhole of, well, all I can really do is just throw a dagger or shoot an arrow and deal sneak attack damage, and that's what I do, right? But that's not true. That's really not true. There's so much more that you can do with the rogue, and this really opens up those options. Being able to do all of the amazing things that Mage Hand Ledger Domain opens you up to is insanely good, and really helps both your survivability and the rest of your party, so that you are not putting yourself or them in harm's way when it comes to traps or other effects like that. You can of course pickpocket people, but to me the trap avoidance is way more important. You've got access to the best spell list in the game with 2 of the best schools in the game, so you're really not concerned about that. And of course, you do get a couple more spells that are just anything you want as you go. They're limited, but you do get a few, and of course those are going to be amazing as always. Magical Ambush is fantastic because it really shores up your weakness in being so mad. And I say being so mad, it's a second one. I mean, it's no worse than a paladin, right? It's no worse than a ranger. So it's really fine. It's not a big deal. So this just makes it even better, and I absolutely love that. And then of course, once you get to 13th and 17th level, you've got some really nice features there, but most people aren't even going to get that far. So the culmination of everything, how does it rank? I honestly think that we have to start off really strong and give this a 10 out of 10. I think that this subclass nailed it right off the bat, even though it's from the player's handbook, which is super weird to have a 10 out of 10 from the player's handbook. I think that's what it is. I think it's really good. I think you're going to have tons of fun playing it. I think you've got so much customizability because of all the spells that you can take, and you can build 6 different ones of these and none of them are the same. You can build all of these you want and you can have so many, and they all have different options. They play completely different. They act completely different. It's just awesome. It's really, really cool. You don't get pigeonholed into the typical rogue archetype that a lot of them end up in. This just allows you to be your own character, and I absolutely love that. So that's our video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Of course, later this week, we're going to be building one of those, and I am super pumped to be back into doing my builds. So be watching for that on Friday. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.